Japan, 1850. A world most people never knew existed. Before the samurai, before the shogun's palace. There were the forgotten ones, the millions who built this civilization with bare, cracked hands. Inside a nagaya, a long tenement house, a poor family of 4 sleeps on a single thin futon. Their entire home is barely larger than a modern bathroom. This was the reality for millions. Kenji wakes before the roosters crow. He is a hiyatoi, a day laborer, which means if he doesn't work today, his family doesn't eat today. There is no safety net. There never was. His wife, Hana, is already awake. She stokes the small clay stove, their only source of heat and cooking. The fuel is dried grass and scavenged wood. Every twig was collected by hand. Breakfast is millet porridge, sometimes mixed with a little rice if they were lucky. No meat, no fish, just grain, hot water, and maybe a pickled plum on special days. This is what survival looked like. By sunrise, the alley is alive. Dozens of families share this narrow strip of earth. The well in the center is the heart of the community. Everyone comes here, and everyone knows everyone's struggles. The communal well was the social center of poor neighborhoods. Women exchanged news, gossip, and, more importantly, food. If a neighbor's child was hungry, you fed them. Community was survival. The children didn't know they were poor. To them, the dirt alley was a kingdom. Toys were carved from bamboo. Scraps. Games were invented fresh every morning. Childhood didn't need money. Beyond the alley, Edo streets hummed to life. Street vendors, tofu sellers, fish peddlers, vegetable carriers walked miles before dawn to stake their corner. Every coin mattered. Not one was wasted. The tofu seller's call echoed through the streets every morning, a haunting sound that told poor families dawn had arrived. A single block of tofu could feed a family for a day. For 1 mon coin, it was theirs. Outside the city, poor farmers worked the rice paddies that fed everyone else. They planted each seedling by hand, bent double in cold, muddy water. Hour after hour, they grew the rice. They rarely ate it. The land they worked often wasn't theirs. Most poor farmers were tenant farmers. They gave 60 to 70% of their harvest to the landlord as rent. What remained had to last all year. The landlord came twice a year. His arrival meant one thing: payment was due. Farmers who couldn't pay faced eviction, debt bondage, or worse. The system was legal. The system was brutal. In the city, day laborers built Edo's grand temples, bridges, and samurai estates with their bare hands. They hauled timber, dug foundations, carried bricks. The work paid 32 mun per day. Barely enough to eat. Lunch was a rice ball, onigiri, wrapped in dried seaweed if they could afford it. Workers had 20 minutes, then back to hauling. The body was the only tool that mattered, and it had to keep working. Along the coast, poor fishermen left before dawn in hand-carved wooden boats. The sea gave everything and took everything. One bad storm could destroy a boat worth years of savings, and the family with it. For poor women, weaving was life. Cotton cloth was always in demand. A skilled weaver could earn enough to supplement the family income, but it meant 14-hour days hunched over a loom, eyes straining in the dim light. Some poor men became keigo, load carriers, hauling hundreds of pounds of firewood, goods, or even people across the city. Their backs bent permanently over years of work. Their payment was barely enough for rice. Washerwomen kneeled at the river every morning, scrubbing the fine clothes of the wealthy with their bare hands in icy water. The irony was not lost on them. They cleaned silk they would never own. Some poor families were artisans, potters, sandal makers, paper folders. They were one step up from day laborers in Edo's rigid class system. But a drought, a flood, or a sick child could push them down in weeks. Debt was the invisible chain that bound the poor. Borrow rice in winter, repay double in summer. Debt passed from father to son. Entire families worked for decades to pay off loans that were never meant to be repaid. The class system in 1850 Japan was absolute and ruthless. Below the samurai were farmers, then artisans, then merchants, and below them, the outcast communities, known as eta, forbidden from most of society's rights entirely. Children of the poor became workers as soon as they could carry weight. By age 7, a boy might already have a job, carrying water, delivering goods, minding a stall. Childhood had an expiry date set by poverty. Famine was never far away. A bad monsoon season, a crop blight, a pest infestation, and an entire village could starve. Between 1830 and 1843, the Tempo famine killed hundreds of thousands across Japan. During famines, the Tokugawa government opened emergency rice stores, but the line stretched for miles, and the rice ran out before many reached the front. Those who survived did so on roots, bark, and grief. A typical meal for the poor: millet porridge, pickled vegetables, and if they were lucky, a small dried fish. Rice, the food they grew, was often too expensive for them to eat. That paradox defined their entire existence. Yet around that small table, something beautiful happened. The family ate together, spoke together, laughed together. Poverty stripped away everything except what mattered most: the people beside you. The public bathhouse, the sento, was the great equalizer. For 1 mon, even the poorest resident of Edo could have a hot bath. The communal bath was where walls came down, stories were shared, and the day's exhaustion was washed away. Inside the sento, a rice farmer sat beside a carpenter beside a street peddler. In the hot water, everyone was just a person. The bath was the one daily luxury that the poor of Edo refused to give up. Clothing was never thrown away. A kimono was mended until the original fabric was unrecognizable. Patch upon patch, each one a record of a hardship survived. When it could no longer be worn, it became a rag. When it was a rag, it became fuel. The entire contents of a poor family's home could be carried on two people's backs. They owned almost nothing, but every object was used, repaired, valued. Nothing was wasted. Waste was a luxury they could not afford. Joy lived in small things: a paper crane, a firefly caught in a jar, the first cherry blossom of spring. The poor of Japan found beauty everywhere, because beauty, unlike rice, was free. Religion was the pillar that held everything up. At the local shrine, the poor prayed for rain, for health, for the rice harvest, for one more year. The gods, at least, had no class system. Illness was terrifying for the poor. Doctors existed only for the wealthy. Poor families relied on wandering medicine peddlers who sold herbal remedies, some useful, many not. A sick child was not just a heartbreak. It was a financial catastrophe. But there were festivals. Oh, there were festivals. Summer Matsuri came twice a year, and the poorest neighborhood transformed overnight. Worn kimono were packed away, and the best ones, barely better, came out. For 3 days, joy was free. After work, men gathered outside with a shared flask of cheap sake. It was not indulgence. It was medicine for the spirit. The laughter in that alley was real, unscripted, and defiant. Some things poverty could not take. Stories were the inheritance the poor could always afford to give. Grandmothers kept the old tales alive, of gods and demons, of brave farmers and greedy lords. These stories told children, you come from something. You are worth something. Sometimes the poor fought back, not with swords, but with petitions. Groups of farmers would press their fingerprints onto grievance letters sent to officials. It was dangerous. Those who led the petitions often disappeared. When famine came and the rice merchants hoarded supply to drive up prices, the poor exploded. Uchikawashi, smashing protests, swept through Edo. Angry mobs destroyed merchant warehouses. The government called it crime. History calls it desperation. Not everyone had a family to return to. Widows with no male relatives faced the cruelest side of 1850 Japan, with no rights, no income, no safety net. Many ended up begging on the temple steps. Their stories went unrecorded. Below even the common poor were the ETA, an outcast. Group forced to work with leather and dead animals, jobs considered impure. They were forbidden from entering most neighborhoods, most temples, most futures. Their suffering existed below the floor of poverty. Pride was a luxury the poor learned to bury. A man who could not feed his child would press his face to the wet ground and beg an official for tax relief. It was humiliation swallowed for love. Many swallowed it every year. When times were truly desperate, poor families sold what they had left, their children. Sending a son to be a dechi, a live-in shop servant, meant one fewer mouth to feed. The boy might work 10 years before he could come home. The moneylender shop was the most feared building in any poor neighborhood. Interest rates of 50% were legal and normal. Borrow enough to survive winter, and you'd spend the next 3 years paying it back. Winter was the season of fear. Fuel was scarce. Children got sick. The rice container ran low. Every cold night was a calculation. How much fuel is left? How much food is left? How many days until spring? A single dried fish, split 6 ways. This was precision born of necessity. A mathematics of survival so practiced it became instinct. Nothing extra, nothing wasted. Every portion measured against another day. Death came fast and often. Cholera, dysentery, smallpox, diseases that swept through cramped Nagaya neighborhoods like wildfire. Life expectancy for the poor hovered around 40 years. Every adult had buried someone they loved young. In 1849, just 1 year before our story, Japan began its first smallpox vaccination campaign, using a method brought from the West. For poor families, it was a miracle that arrived too late. For those already gone. In the temple, the names of the dead multiplied year by year. Infants who didn't survive their first winter. Young fathers lost to construction accidents. Mothers taken by fever after childbirth. The tablets were the autobiography of poverty, and yet they sat together on summer nights and watched the fireflies dance. And it was enough. It had to be enough. Because it was all there was. And somehow, it was beautiful. But 1850 was not ordinary. Winds were shifting, not just from the sea. Foreign ships had been spotted circling Japan's coast. The outside world was pressing against the closed door of the Tokugawa order. And when that door broke open, nothing would ever be the same. News spread in 1850. Edo, the old way, shouted through streets, whispered in bathhouses, passed mouth to ear, and one whisper spread everywhere. Foreign ships with iron and fire were coming. The world they knew was running out of time. Kenji, our laborer, had never heard of America. Had never seen a map of the world, but he sensed it, the way animals sense a storm. Something enormous was coming, and the poor, as always, would face it first. In the shrines and alleys, poor communities began their own quiet conversations. If the old order collapsed, if the shogunate fell, what would become of them? Would their debts be erased? Would the land become theirs? Nobody knew. For the young and desperate, change, even terrifying change, held a secret hope. Maybe the world being destroyed was also the world that had trapped them. Maybe the end of one era was the beginning of their freedom. This was the world they lived in. Hard, unjust, and beautiful in the only way hard things can be beautiful. Honestly, no filters, no illusions. Just people. Surviving. together. 1 day at a time. Hana watches the sun go down over the rooftops of Edo. Tomorrow the stove will need lighting before dawn. Tomorrow the rice container might be empty again, but tonight the sky is burning gold and her children are fed, and that is enough. As darkness fell over Edo, 10,000 little lamps flickered to life. Each one a family, each flame a life. Each life a story almost entirely unwritten, because the poor left no monuments, only descendants. They built the temples, they grew the rice, they carried the burdens of an empire on their backs, and history barely remembered their names. But they were real, their pain was real, their love was real, and now, you know them. The question is this: 170 years later, do we still build our world on the backs of those we choose not to see? Think about it, and if you feel something, leave a comment below. Their story deserves to be told.